Hi, good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday morning. I am thinking that what came into my mind this morning is thinking about Self-Care Sunday. What are we going to talk about for Self-Care Sunday? And I think that for our check-in this morning, I would like to talk about something that has come up a lot, and not just in the last few weeks, but really does come up a lot with all of us in this human experience. The lack of trust that we have in ourselves. And where does that come from, and how do we access that? How do we build that? A healthier sense of trust within ourselves. I was thinking about that in terms of some of the last few check-ins that we've had, where we are really accessing that inner wisdom, accessing our guts. Stacy talks about that all the time when we're doing yoga, dropping into that space, that inner knowing. And I know that over the last couple of weeks, I've touched on a couple other topics that really coincide with this trust in terms of where do we give our energy away? Where do we give our power away? What are we holding that doesn't belong to us? What are we not wanting to look at in ourselves? All of these are part of what is part of how we trust ourselves. And really, there are very few of us out there that don't have to work at building that muscle of accessing that wisdom and that trust, because along the way, there have been so many circumstances where we have been told, or it's been modeled, not to trust. And that's really what I want to point out today. Really shine the light on it. Because I think that in our culture, there is this epidemic where we don't trust ourselves. And we're operating from this place of trying to figure everything out just with our heads, from the head up. And not accessing any of the wisdom and the inner knowing that we're carrying in the rest of us. And this, when I say trust, this is the other thing that I want to talk about. Trusting ourselves doesn't mean that we're always going to, when we're acting from that place of knowing, it doesn't necessarily always mean that things turn out okay. For me and my definition of healthy trust, it's that I am moving forward. My actions are based and in alignment with that healthy sense of power and intuition. So I'm in alignment with my values, my purpose, and I take care of my thoughts and my emotions along the way, and I continue to move forward. And in that way, we are building a sense of trust. Even if things aren't quite going as the way that we want them to go, that separating that out from I'm doing the wrong thing versus sometimes things just happen and we're not in control of everything. But really operating from this place of I'm doing the best that I can with what I have, and trusting that I'm accessing all of the information on all levels in order to move forward with my actions. And the things that stop us from doing that, the beliefs and the thoughts and the feelings that stop us from doing that, are really learned behaviors. They're learned. It's imprinted in us from our childhood. And if we look back and see all of the possible ways where it was shown, it was directed at us, or we were just witness to all of the different ways where we abandon or betray ourselves. And I think that I know that for me, it has been eye-opening to really shine a light on that, to recognize where does that show up in my life. And that was really brought to my attention by my therapist years ago when I was in her office. And I was so distraught about being at a training, and we were doing sessions, really deep work, deep sessions, which require a lot of trust and safety. And it was my turn, and I was the subject, and someone else in my cohort was doing the session, but there was also a teacher who was supervising. And even though I was in my process, I heard this teacher say, "I'll be back. I'm going to go grab some more of that dessert from lunch." And I could not shake that. And I went in to process this with my therapist about how she abandoned me. I was truly in this vulnerable place, and she left me for food. She left me to go get dessert. And the most profound question that my dear therapist asked me was, "And do you do that to yourself? How do you do that to yourself? Are there any places in your life where you abandon yourself to go get a sandwich or to go get some dessert?" And that stopped me in my tracks. Right? To recognize that the things that I'm seeing out here that really trigger me, how am I doing that to myself? And that's really the portal for our own healing and learning how to trust ourselves. So the different ways that perhaps we experience self-betrayal or self-abandonment growing up. Let's talk about that. So one of them is what we would call reality denying. So this is when an adult or a caregiver, somebody that we care about and have to place our trust in, denies something that is actually happening, that we're seeing or that we're aware of. So an example of this would be us knowing that a parent is drinking and them denying it, knowing that there is fighting taking place, and no, you're making this up, or you're too sensitive, or you're seeing things, or that's just not true. And so we learn at a really young age, we can learn at a really young age to question ourselves. Did that really happen? Maybe I am making it up, or maybe I'm exaggerating it, right? And every time this kind of reality denying happens, we lose more trust in our inner knowing. Another way where we learn self-abandonment, self-betrayal is by emotional dismissing. So when the people in our life growing up deny any kind of hard emotional experience that we're experiencing as a child, that we really don't have the emotional or physiologically, with our brain development, we don't have a way to be able to regulate and process properly. So we're stuck in that overwhelm. And if we don't have people in our life who can recognize that and know how to process their own emotions, they will deny our emotions. They just don't know what to do with it, or it's too uncomfortable, it's unacceptable, right? So if as a child we were upset and we were told to it's okay, just suck it up, or it really isn't that bad, or you have so much to be grateful for, or here's where that comparison game comes in, which I know is really prevalent, especially right now with everything that's going on. I have emotions that are coming up, and then if we as a child were told, you don't have as bad as these kids over here. Eat everything on your plate. I don't care if you're not hungry or you don't like it. There are children that are starving over here. So it dismisses all of our own emotions, and we start to compare or judging what we're feeling as right or wrong, or I don't have a right to feel this way, or I should be feeling this way. And so we lose trust, we lose touch with trusting our own emotional experience. And then we don't get the tools that we need to help process whatever it is that we're feeling. Another way of that we see self-betrayal or self-abandonment in action is when we see a parent betray their own needs to get safety, security, or love, or any of their needs met. And this is especially true in heavily codependent families, where we might see a parent, a mother, constantly not speaking up for what she needs, even though she might speak it to us. I really want to do this, or I really need this. And then you can see the interaction between the adults, how she may, or the parent might just hold it back, not speak it, go along with whatever is happening at the cost of themselves. We can see this when parents remain in abusive relationships where there's lack of boundaries, and then that lack of being able to communicate any needs. So this is all, when we live in this sort of dynamic, this is our blueprint, right? That I might have these needs, I might have these feelings, and yet if I'm going to get love or safety or security, I have to hold that back. I can't express that. So we deny it or abandon ourselves to get that need met. That's also a really strong blueprint for so many of us. And then the fourth way, where it's modeled that we cut off that connection of self-trust, self-betrayal, abandon ourselves, right, is where that is really modeled for us and the people around us who might know better and then don't do anything, right? So they're neglecting, this is self-neglect, they're neglecting their physical, mental, or spiritual wellness, or all of them, right? So we see this modeled for us time and time again, where the people we grew up with didn't practice any self-care. Maybe they were impulsive, lacked any kind of self-awareness, weren't able to regulate their emotions. Right? So they were perhaps participating in self-destructive behaviors. And again, that is our imprint in us. What's really important about shining a light on all of this and seeing, oh my gosh, this is what I grew up in. This is what was modeled for me. These are some of these things are showing up in my life, is to really separate that out from while this might be what we do, it isn't who we are. It's a learned behavior. And we can't do anything about changing a learned behavior until we're aware that it's really there. I mean, really being clear and shining a light on it. And once we do that, we can release, and we know that we're not alone in this, we can start to release some shame around it, and we can start to make different choices. Recognizing these beliefs and these actions of giving our power away, of abandoning ourselves, they run really, really deep in us. We also, there are small yet really important ways that we can start to heal that, not just by recognizing. I mean, that's the first step, is being aware of what's happening and the why. But what can we do to start to heal that, to start to build more trust in ourselves? And there are 3 simple, not necessarily easy, but 3 simple ways that we can do this. Chunking this out, being able to step into this in a realistic way. And the first one is making and keeping small promises to ourselves. Small promises is the key word here. So we don't want to set ourselves up for failure. We don't want to set ourselves up for this cycle of I get overwhelmed, and so I'm abandoning myself again or neglecting myself again. because that can be a vicious cycle. Small, tangible promises we can keep to ourselves every single day to start to build that trust. This can be something as small as I move my body every day. It might not be that I am really out there exercising the way that I want to every day, but I am moving my body every day. It could be that I am drinking more water. It can be that I am getting to bed at a decent hour more than I'm not. So making these small, tangible goals, that promises to ourselves that we can keep. Okay. This is so important to building that trust. And this leads into the second thing that we can do, which is employ discipline. So when we make these promises, we have to be disciplined in following through with them to build that pathway of trust. This means that we can recognize the resistance that comes up. We can recognize the thoughts that come up. We can recognize all the feelings, deal with all the feelings that might come up. And we absolutely want to acknowledge and work with everything that comes up, but then we do it anyway. We do the action anyway, because we want to keep that promise to ourselves. So again, this is why it's really important to start with achievable promises that we can make to ourselves. Do not leap into something huge. We want to systematically work ourselves up to that. And then the third thing that we can do, which is often really overlooked, I know that this has been a huge issue for me, is then we celebrate. We celebrate all of our accomplishments, even if they're really small. Every promise that I keep to myself is worth a celebration. It is worth acknowledgement. It is worth it is worth looking at. It is worth celebrating, whatever that looks like. But I know that when I do take the time to acknowledge, wow, I did follow through on that, and that feels so good. I feel lighter, and I feel like I feel more optimistic. I feel like this is possible. I can reach my ultimate goal if I have larger goals. And it leaves us a little bit more space to feel a little lighter, to play a little more, to just access a little bit more joy, optimism. So the celebration piece for some of us might be really hard, and yet it's such an important thing to work in. Again, if we think about these are younger parts of us that are carrying the burden of these beliefs. And as children, one of the needs that we have is really to be celebrated, our accomplishments to be celebrated. We really want to bring that in for ourselves. So thinking about the ways that we were taught, that it was modeled how to abandon, betray, or just give our power away, how that's showing up in our life, and building that trust within ourselves. So what promise can you make to yourself today? And making sure you absolutely follow through with it, and then you celebrate yourself. Those are the takeaways from our check-in this morning. It's a lot of information, I know. But what a beautiful act of self-care for all of us on this Sunday. All right. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for all of the good mornings. It's really nice to see all of you here, and I look forward to our time again tomorrow morning. Okay, goodbye.